that resulted in countless deaths of Americans that could have been prevented. Under this legislation, if an SBA office is currently within a city that is the sanctuary jurisdiction, it will be relocated to another area within that same state. H.R. 2966, the American Entrepreneur's First Act of 2025, protects hardworking taxpayers by ensuring that lawful, eligible applicants are the only ones who can access programs that are administered by the Small Business Administration. Let me make two things crystal clear. Non-citizens shouldn't be afforded loans and financing backed by American taxpayers. Illegal aliens do not deserve the public benefit at the expense of lawful residents.
Madam Chair, and I want to begin by condemning, in the strongest possible terms, the appalling act of anti-Semitic violence that happened in Boulder, Colorado over the weekend, which happens to be in our colleague Mr. Negus's district. Let's be clear. Anti-Semitism is vile, it is wrong, and it has absolutely no place in America. And targeting peaceful protesters for exercising their First Amendment rights flies in the face of everything this country is supposed to stand for. My heart is with the victims, their families, and everyone impacted by these cowardly acts of hate. And now, turning to the matter at hand. These bills before us are just another attempt to vilify all immigrants and distract from the Trump administration's disastrous failure to lower costs or do anything meaningful to help the people of this country. By vilifying all immigrants, vilifying all immigrants doesn't make us safer, Madam Chair. In fact, it makes us less safe. It tears families apart and it hurts people, including people like Carol Huey in Missouri, who worked 2 jobs to support her son, who's beloved in her community, and who has been detained by ICE. There is a powerful story about her, which I would encourage every one of you to read, which I would like to insert into the record, entitled, A Missouri Town Was Solidly Behind Trump, Then Carol Was Detained.
Without objection.
Even U.S. citizens are being swept up in overzealous crackdowns. That's not border security, it's cruelty for political gain. And to be clear, Democrats are not denying that there's a problem. We want smart, humane, effective solutions that keep us safe without sacrificing our values. What Republicans are offering is the opposite, a system that lets real threats slip through while largely punishing innocent people. And that brings me to the bills that are before us today. One bill reauthorizes funding for programs that help communities fight the opiate crisis, something that I have supported. But it's hard to take Republicans seriously when Trump and his cronies are actively dismantling those very programs. If they were serious about this crisis, they'd stop undermining the solutions. Then we have the other 3 bills, which claim to support small businesses, but do the exact opposite. DOGE already shuttered an SBA office in my district in Massachusetts, forcing rural small business owners to drive hours to get to the nearest SBA office in Boston. Now, under this bill, if Republicans force the closure of the Boston office out of political spite, it will leave small businesses in Massachusetts with nowhere else to turn. It will have disastrous long-term consequences for the rural entrepreneurs and working-class families in my home state who rely on the SBA to navigate federal assistance and recover from economic setbacks, like the increased costs that they're facing because of Trump's reckless trade war. Because in case you didn't know, Trump's tariff chaos does in fact punish small businesses. Unlike the mega donors who bankroll Republican campaigns, small business owners can't hedge against that kind of volatility. Every time Trump throws another tantrum on trade, Republicans are tossing small businesses into a tailspin with no warning, no help, and frankly, no concern. But maybe that's the point. Republicans aren't governing to help regular people. They're governing to protect the powerful and punish the vulnerable. Look no further than the GOP tax scam House Republicans jammed through the House last month. On the recent pay-for-play pardons handed out to Trump loyalists, people who paid up or praised him. The Republicans' message is clear. If you're rich and you support Trump, Republicans will take care of you. If you're not, you're on your own. They're not in this for working families or small businesses. They're in it for themselves and for ultra-wealthy, for the ultra-wealthy who keep their campaigns afloat. Madam Chair, I think it's disgraceful, and I think the American people deserve better. With that, I welcome our witnesses and look forward to their testimony. I yield back.
Thank you. I thank you, Mr. McGovern, for mentioning the horrific attack in Colorado. I had issued several statements on it, which is why I did not begin with it, but I thank you for bringing it up today, and we'll say something to Mr. Neguse when he's here. I do have a quick word of personal privilege. I recognize the father of Patrick on our majority staff, Mr. Peter Engelhardt, who's here with us from Dripping Springs, Texas. We want you to know, Mr. Engelhardt, that Patrick's doing a fantastic job of staffing the committee, and you should be very, very proud of him. So I'd like the record to reflect that. Thank you for being here.
Madam Chairman, I would just like to welcome him from my home district and my hometown. So,
thank you. Without objection, any prepared statements our witnesses may have will be included in the record. I now welcome our first panel, Chairman Guthrie, Ranking Member Pallone from the Committee on Energy and Commerce. Your full statement will be submitted for the record, and we ask you summarize your statement in 5 minutes. Chairman Guthrie, I welcome your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We've heard some odd arguments, I think, in support of these bills, and I'll be honest, I really struggle to understand how it's going to help the small businesses in our region, because these bills don't seem to meet the needs of those businesses that are reaching out to our office for help as they try to particularly navigate the chaos, the economic chaos that we're seeing from Trump's tariff wars and the disruption to our economy and the Small Business Administration that have occurred over the first 5 months of this administration. So these are some of the first bills from the Small Business Committee to come through the Rules Committee since Republicans took the majority over 2 years ago, and they really seem to just be fodder for the Republican base and filler for the legislative calendar. It almost seems insulting to the nation's small business owners to get a bunch of lip service when we're not actually providing help to them. Right now across the country, our nation's small businesses are struggling to deal with the fallout from the president's disastrous tariff policies. Nearly every week, the policies change in a Truth Social post or a mean tweet, and we find out that this or that tariff is going to be higher or lower, that some are going to be delayed and others aren't, or that some amounts will be stacked and others combined. It's become a full-time job for businesses in our country to keep up with the effective tariff rate, let alone plan how they're going to handle the financial impact of those tariffs, which are essentially taxes on those businesses and their customers. So we've heard from dozens of small businesses in our district about lines of business that are being destroyed by the tariffs. Many are planning to lay off staff. They're canceling upcoming capital and construction projects. Some are facing the prospect of having to shut down completely. And these impacts are having ripple effects across our entire local economy. More unemployment, less business spending, and less investment. And then, of course, there end up being secondary impacts to contractors, to suppliers, and to buyers of manufactured goods, because most small businesses don't have the resources to ride out this kind of economic chaos like Amazon or Facebook or Tesla or any of the president's billionaire donors and buddies. If our colleagues actually care about small businesses and want to do something to help them, the number one thing they could do right now is find a spine and push back on these tariffs. But instead, our colleagues and the Speaker have actually blocked the House of Representatives from considering any legislation to end the fake national emergency that has been relied upon as justification for these tariffs. The Constitution says that Congress is the arm of the federal government responsible for setting tariffs and regulating foreign trade, not the White House. Congress could end these tariff wars today, but instead the House majority is saying, oh, not our problem, just let the White House wreak havoc on the economy and disrupt our relationship with many of our closest allies. So then we have, in addition, we have these specific bills before us today that are only going to make it harder for small businesses to access small business administration resources. If we look at HR 2931, a bill that would force the Small Business Administration to close existing offices in many of the nation's major cities, impacting tens of thousands of small business owners. How's that efficient? It'll be a massive waste of taxpayer dollars to relocate all these offices. As the ranking member maintained, we've seen no evidence that there's justification to do so. Our Republican colleagues, I don't think, have any legitimate evidence that a single undocumented immigrant has inappropriately received a small business loan. And as given our Republican colleagues' focus on cutting government bloat, why is it a good idea to add a whole new layer of compliance costs for the banks and credit unions that issue small business loans? None of this sounds very efficient either to me or to the small business owners in our region. It just doesn't really seem to help the conditions that actual small businesses are dealing with. Ranking member, I know that there was some discussion about what kind of evidence has been introduced to support these changes. Do you want to comment on that or anything else?
Well, I think that it's irresponsible to push legislation that will have an impact on small businesses and not having any type of oversight, any hearing in the committee, bringing expert witnesses to testify. And again, if you're saying that undocumented, ineligible people are getting those loans, show me the proof. Mm-hmm. You have only one thing that you're saying, one case that the current administrator is pointing to. I don't know, because we haven't seen it. Mm-hmm. She hasn't been before the committee. But I can tell you that this is going to be detrimental to small businesses. The bill harms American small businesses by preventing them from accessing credit. It likely violates the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. SBA lenders have been calling my office because they are concerned that if they deny these loans to these businesses, they could be accused of violation of ECOA. It runs counter to the SBA's mission and runs afoul of prudent underwriting by basing origination on borrowers' national origination, not the credit worthiness. And let me just say, the fact that only one case was found, even if it's true, it shows that the system works.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate your bringing those facts to light. You know, seeing yet another instance of trying to stir up fear of immigrants, et cetera, as a basis for some really radical policy changes that are going to really hurt small businesses and that are going to be a grotesque waste of taxpayer dollars, especially with closing offices, et cetera. I really appreciate your testimony, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank each of you for coming. You know, I think, aren't we talking about not letting illegals who are illegal in this country getting an SBA loan that is financed by the government?
That's the law.
Is that not? And so if it's not a problem, then you should vote for this bill. If it's not a problem, like you say it is, Ms.
No,
Velasquez,
sir,
then
because...
hold on, I'll let you respond.
Okay.
If it's not a problem, and then support it, because I think you'd acknowledge there are 15 million or more in this country that President Biden let in. I'm in this world. I'm a developer. I'm the one that we've done the SBA loans. Tell me where I'm off.
So first, the Small Business Act prohibits any assistance to individuals who are unlawfully in the United States. That's the law. If there is a particular case, like the one that she mentioned, the thing that they have to do, the administrator, is to turn over that case to the Inspector General to investigate. We have no knowledge of any investigation. Well, we don't have an Inspector General in place anyway, but there is no evidence to show that undocumented immigrants are receiving SBA loans. This is what the law says that they cannot, any unlawful person. But there are unintended consequences where it's going to disincentivize banks, lenders from approving those loans because they are afraid that it will violate the ECOA, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, and that they will be liable. That's what the lenders are telling us.
Ms. Van Dam, you want to respond to that?
No, I do. We know for a fact that there have been billions of dollars that were illegally, that were fraudulently expended by the SBA. We know this. Where have they gone? We're trying to find that out. But the fact is that the only thing that this does is make it a requirement to verify that these dollars are being given to people who are in our country legally, that are American businesses. That is all it's doing, is simply verifying. That is not currently required.
And the fact that the Biden administration didn't enforce it, that's the other problem, wouldn't you say?
We absolutely know that they didn't enforce it.
Because unless this figure is wrong, that the Biden administration approved a $783,000 SBA loan application in June of 2024 that was 49% owned by illegal immigrants. That's kind of a fact, isn't it?
That was uncovered under this current administration while they were reviewing.
And that's just during one.
Correct.
Well, the illegals that come into the country, have they paid into our Social Security, our Medicaid?
No, sir, they have not.
They hadn't paid anything in, yet taken advantage of a participation with a bank. And I will tell you, under the Biden administration, they just didn't enforce it. That's why they let as many illegals in this country as they did, to create, in my opinion, a power base. And it just didn't work. And now that this is this just solidifies what I guess Ms. Velasquez is saying is not a problem, but all you're doing is verifying it. They have to fill out an application. And the SBA application process is lengthy anyway. And I think in 23, the bank board I was on, we did it every month. And it was an extensive process. But under the Biden administration, they were almost scared to enforce it because of all these equal rights and things that, that they were worried about having to be litigated and sued over. You want to respond any?
I would say that what they did, and I heard this firsthand, I'm on the Small Business Committee, I heard this firsthand from a number of different lenders, that under the Biden administration, they were making them check boxes for a number of different DEI programs that was forcing dollars away. So if they want to talk about the added burden of what they did to our lenders, to small businesses, it was abhorrent. That was allowed to continue. This administration is putting an end to it. This is merely saying that for every dollar that has been given away to folks who are illegally in our country is a dollar that was not given to hardworking American small businesses.
And what do you think this is doing for the price of housing and the price of commercial buildings, that they take money that should go to legal Americans? What is it doing for those?
It's obviously extending the burden on our middle class, on our working families, and on our small businesses.
And a lot of the illegals that we've encountered, they've got a document. The Biden administration issued driver's license, they issued fake Social Security numbers. So if they'll lie on that, if they'll lie with that, what else will they lie on? Ms. Velasquez, you want to answer any of that?
Where is the evidence, sir? Where is the evidence? Show me the proof. You just can't come here and make up things up without presenting evidence. And the administrator, for 6 months that has been in office, has not come before the committee to answer questions and to share with us what is her opinion on the different proposals.
It doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. When you're
I
in a
can see
process,
that.
It does not work
And when
that
you
way.
talk about the billions of dollars that have gone to ineligible small businesses, yes, you're right. It happened under the first Trump administration when we implemented the PPP, and he loosened up the guardrails on the PPP.
They're not being enforced under the Biden administration. Just
No.
like just like the borders
You-
were not.
you're
just
totally-
like the borders
sir,
were not.
you're totally wrong.
I'm reclaiming my time. Just like the
Okay.
borders were never enforced.
Yeah.
Open borders that derail this country. And the things that this is just codifying is a common sense. She should be for it if what she's saying is true. You want to
Well, the administrator is actually going to be in front of the Small Business Committee in the next week, and the administrator has already testified twice in front of the Senate. So she absolutely has been responsive. In addition, I would say that while they're looking at one example, there are plenty of examples. The only thing this does, if the administrator is correct, in which it is true, that this is part of law, all we're doing is saying it has to be verified.
And are there penalties with it if they falsify records?
I'm sure there are. That's not part of this bill.
Okay. Well, thank you for putting this up. This is, it's amazing we have to even argue about this, but it is. I yield back, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. Ms. Leisure Fernandez, you're recognized.
Thank you so very much for recognizing me, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here, Chairwoman. And I love it when there's two chairwomen, this Chairwoman and Ranking Member. But I do think that it is important that we stay rooted in fact. And the reality is there were no open borders during Biden. And in fact, Biden has deported more immigrants than Trump has, although he has done horrible things like deporting children who have brain cancer. They have deported citizens. They have acted in a manner that it is incredibly callous. But I wanted to give you some time, Ranking Member, to be able to answer some of the accusations that were made in a way that will allow you to do so without being interrupted. Ranking Member Velasquez.
Well, let me say that the law, the Small Business Act, requires and states clearly that an unlawful citizen person cannot access loans by the SBA, by the small business. That is clear. But here we have it. You know, the Republicans in the Financial Services Committee and in the Small Business Committee, they raised the issue of, you know, Democrats imposing requirements and all these regulations that are impacting and killing small businesses. But they are advocating for this in this bill. This bill shows the hypocrisy of the Republican majority. The majority opposed both the CFPB Section 1071 rule and the beneficial ownership requirements rule because it was onerous against small businesses. With Section 1071, that information was voluntary. And now, under this legislation, it's a requirement. They have to comply. So it's just unbelievable. No oversight, no information shared with us on sanctuary cities, how many of these offices will be closing down, what is going to be the cost to SBA. 40% of the workforce are going to be eliminated, fire off, and they are taking on more responsibility, like student loans. Since when that is the mission of SBA?